Psychological avoidance is a massive problem. You'll have heard of the saying, burying your head in the sand like an ostrich. Well, that, in a nutshell, is avoidance. If we saw in the previous film that social conditioning is like being brainwashed, then avoidance is like chopping off one of your arms and one of your legs, plus blinding yourself in one eye. The intention might be otherwise, but the effects of avoidance nevertheless add up to a clear case of self-harm. You become a lesser person as a result. It's not good. The problem with people is that they don't want to know what the problem with them is. They think they can't handle the truth or reality of a situation. Instead, they avoid facing what's what. It's evasiveness. Avoidance is all around us, everywhere. Everyone does it. Everyone's an ostrich. It's a lesson taught and learnt by all. As a strategy, it's deceptively simple. You avoid anything you don't want to face. You block it out. You shrug it off. You displace it onto someone or something else. You pretend it isn't as bad as it actually is. It's whatever. And because everyone does it, avoidance has become firmly entrenched. You barely notice what you're all doing. It's been normalised. And it fucks you up. So this film, the fourth in the series, will give you the means to start waking up, to start seeing what you and everyone else are doing, yet not really realising. It begins with awareness, which is a bit like the dawning of a new day. In the second film, we outlined the 16 key factors, and these add up to a blueprint for change, a route map or the components of capability. But that's not enough. We must also look at what will frustrate any attempts to change, the various tricks and trade of the avoidance syndrome. When you clearly understand, in detail, what will hold you back and hinder any potential progress, then you'll also have a second map. Together you'll be armed with what we call our dual framework approach. And that's incredibly powerful. If you follow the process, you'll be able to change your life for the benefit of all. Avoidance begins as an emotional response to anxiety, disappointment or failure. Basically a means of coping when things don't go your way or when you don't get what you want. How you respond to this anxiety and the various disappointments you encounter massively influences who you become. The aim of avoidance is simply to minimise or even prevent any further emotional pain or discomfort. You don't want to feel anxious, bad or unhappy. You try to shut it out, turn the volume down or laugh it off. But you end up only hearing what you want to hear, selectively seeing what you want to see. What starts off as a superficial attempt at self-protection ends up seriously hurting you in the long term. The avoidance strategy distorts and restricts your perception of reality, placing barriers and limitations in your way. So it seriously backfires. You end up as a dumbed-down human being according to the extent of your no-go areas. And it creeps up on you through the conditioning of monkey do what monkey see, so you won't be fully aware of what's been going on. As people are intelligent, avoidance can become subtle and complex, even sophisticated, although a lot of it remains basic and blatant. It rapidly becomes habitual, ever-present and ever-ready. And because everybody does it, it's rarely challenged or discussed, so it just builds up and up. You'll almost certainly underestimate the extent of your avoidance, perhaps comparing down to others who blatantly deflect, thinking you're not as bad as them. The normalisation of everyday behaviour kills a freshness of seeing. You need to look again. As well as the self-imposed limitations to keep you safe from further emotional hurt, the amount of psychological baggage you end up carrying around is crippling. Life's challenging enough already without being weighed down by this heavy burden. It messes you up big time, in countless knotted tangles. And when it eventually dawns on you just how dysfunctional you've become, the task of untangling yourself is easier said than done, especially if you don't know exactly what's what. Most people don't even bother to try to undo the jumbled chaos. The usual response is just to shrug your shoulders and carry on as before. Self-defence is necessary when faced with real and present physical danger, something that is thankfully a rare occurrence for most of us in this modern world. It preserves our existence. But the self-defence strategy goes badly wrong when it comes to our psychological or social interactions with others, as well as when thinking about ourselves. Okay, you're hopefully getting the idea of avoidance. As you start to see it, you'll then begin to see it more and more, eventually realising it's everywhere, all around you, and how much it affects human behaviour. Even the dog's doing it. So now let's examine the various forms or manifestations of avoidance. Making excuses is the most common type. You make excuses to block feelings of embarrassment or guilt, to avoid the negative judgment of others, to displace the acknowledgement of wrongdoing or failure that might otherwise lower your self-esteem. Excuses, very simply, get you off the proverbial hook. Or, at least, that's the intention. Whether or not others actually believe these attempts to deceive or dodge responsibility is another matter, but that's the aim. Excuses can be internalised as thoughts in your own head, as well as something you vocalise to others. Excuses commonly go something like this. I can't because. I'm tired. There wasn't enough time. These are classics that you'll often hear, and they all soon become a self-fulfilling prophecy as you find yourself becoming a lazy and exhausted person, yet still only in your 20s or 30s when physical vitality should be at its peak. If you argue for the limitations of being feeble, you'll likely become feeble. Bog standard ones aside, the inventiveness or creativity of excuse-making seems almost endless. Integrity and trustworthiness suffer. What's the difference between an excuse and an outright lie? And by lessening the blame, you can easily become less responsible over time. If excuses are meant to stop feelings of low self-esteem, the very act of making them drags you down to a lower level of being. But, hey-ho, everybody does it, so surely it can't be that bad. Whereas, actually, it can and is bad. Avoidance fucks you up. Society frequently discourages an open and forward-looking approach to life. It's easier when people merely toe the line. So excuses are commonly accepted when they should be rejected as acts of silliness, reflecting exactly what they are. The majority of people want to fit in and just trundle along with the minimum effort. If you challenge someone making a silly excuse, you'll likely get an increasing torrent of abuse back. So most people effectively hurt each other by letting excuses go unchecked. It results in a mutual dumbing down. The effect of this, when magnified in a government department, business or another organisation, is a colossal loss of productivity. High standards and good ideas are swept aside as complacency rules. When there's justification, the consequences add up, and we all lose out on a much better world. When you're a beginner trying to get your head around all of this, you might struggle to work out what's a valid reason, as different from an excuse. The problem is you can justify almost anything. A good tip for sorting out what's what is to ask yourself if you're arguing for your limitations, or pushing to be the best you can be. Blaming others for your own mistakes or problems is another common form of avoidance. There's always a handy scapegoat. You're the one at fault, but to keep your image or social standing safe, you pass the buck on to someone or something else. It's a case of, he did it, not me. A scapegoat might be an individual, a group, a country, an object, or a set of circumstances. It's a whipping post or fall guy. The person wanting to avoid accepting responsibility looks for a convenient weak point elsewhere. It's displacement or projection, a psychological defence mechanism based on me first. Minimisation, trivialisation and intellectualisation are other tricks to help you disassociate. Minimisation can be thought of as the opposite to exaggeration. Yet again, it's a method for self-deception, so you can reduce taking something that you find emotionally difficult on board. You can't quite justify outright denial, so the next best thing is to somehow use twisted reasoning to condone your avoidance. You reduce the extent of exposure. Trivialisation is similar, only you misuse humour to laugh off or make light of a situation. It's all about being able to cope, which is a sad state of affairs. Rather than being fully alive, fully human, you instead shrink and shrivel and shrink again into a lesser state of coping with life. Fear and avoidance win out. Humanity is the casualty. And intellectualisation is again similar. Only this is what clever people do, who pride themselves on being clever. It's a flight into sterile mental reasoning, well away from any grounded practicality. They can't be seen to merely swipe or dismiss something in a typically low manner. Instead, they intellectually argue themselves off the hook, perhaps hiding behind terminology or theoretical indulgence. They don't have to acknowledge the real-life consequences, adjust their direction, and act in a different way that clear reason would dictate. All of which isn't really very clever. It's just the usual cowardice. Intentional forgetfulness is another trick. You delay doing something, put off facing up to something, until you later forget. Like the other sorts of avoidance, it's a remarkably simple strategy. It's not the type of forgetfulness that happens when you can't find your keys, which is the absence of memory. Rather, it's intentional. It's a deliberate dimming and dulling. The aim is to diminish your sensitivity. Again, this comes at a heavy price. By avoiding, reducing your sensitivity, lowering your conscientiousness, you're making yourself into a lesser human being. You're limiting your potential capacity for caring and, ultimately, shutting off to a higher degree of capability. It adds up to self-sabotage, whether you realised it at the time you chose to avoid or not. Distraction is nowadays a major avoidance tactic. There are countless forms of this ploy for avoiding some aspect of reality that someone's finding emotionally uncomfortable by diverting your attention elsewhere. We'll be looking at this in another film. Some retreat into the escapism of fantasy. Others sink into outright denial. The use of this term denial is a serious one. It's avoidance taken to an extreme degree. I'm mentioning this because we've all heard Americans say, "You're in denial." And, of course, when they say this, they're referring to the more normal levels of avoidance. The tragedy of suicide is the ultimate form of avoidance. It's when someone convinces themselves that they'd be better off dead. It's all become too much. This is almost always preceded by a string of irrational negative thoughts, justifying the final act. Consideration for the feelings of loved ones, friends and work colleagues left behind are distorted in this mental state of self-preoccupation. Practically speaking, whereas it's obviously too late once suicide has actually happened, beforehand it can be addressed through an understanding of psychology. We'll be covering the topic of learnt helplessness in our next film. We needed to mention suicide now in the context of avoidance, for the sake of being thorough, and we fully appreciate that we're barely touching on this subject here. One of the main consequences of all this projection, displacement and deflection is the knock-on effect of further complicating everything. There are layers upon layers of avoidance within the average individual, and it gets even messier. The problems of some are deflected onto others, adding to their own misery, creating yet more mayhem. A healthy society wouldn't tolerate the blaming of others, or making excuses, or any other type of avoidance. It's a blatant expression, an indicator of disharmony and disunity. Superficial pretense aside, there's no real togetherness. It's unworthy, immature. Avoidance is the hallmark of an inadequate psychology. It clearly pinpoints the present stage of human evolution as backward and primitive. In reality, ostriches don't actually bury their heads in the sand. Contrary to the popular saying, they're not that stupid. We're supposed to be the most intelligent species on our planet. But look at us. Avoidance makes us dumb. It's time to wake up, open our eyes to what's been going on for ages and ages, and finally grow up. Change is long, long overdue. Defensive barriers block the clarity of a way forward. Instead, you accept the muddle of confusion, frustration and contradiction. You're too quick to give up, burying your head in the sand. So what's considered to be normal is, in fact, subnormal. Limitations and dysfunction are tolerated. Peak psychological health remains little more than a potential, when it should be achieved as standard. People are selling themselves short, way short. Get to know which particular tricks of avoidance you use. Watch yourself. Then catch yourself in the act, stopping the deceit. Learn to be better, to be honest. Watch how others make excuses, blame others, etc., etc. Take off the blinkers and the blindfold. Wake up to what's going on. Knowledge and understanding is the way forward, but there must be a dual framework approach. Our 16 key factors are the actual tools, one map. Avoidance, when left unchecked, will undo or stop your efforts to personally develop. So it's crucial that you become sharply aware of this pitfall, arming yourself with extra knowledge or understanding. The second map. In conclusion, it's time to start facing the fact that avoidance doesn't work. In the 5th film in this series, we'll be taking a look at the culture of entitlement and learnt helplessness. Mental health issues are now talked about a lot, but too commonly used as an excuse to be shit. I'll see you again soon.